Unexpected Journey, Memoir of a Siberian Deportee by Juzė Avižienytė-Žukauskiene. Translated from Lithuanian and narrated by Giedrė Kumpikas, niece of the author, and by Isabelle Kumpikas, the sister of the author. Chapter 16, A New Stage in Our Life. A new stage. What did it promise? We did not rejoice, but we also were not too despondent. We were all convinced that the war would end soon and that we would return again to our normal way of life. We thought that we would earn enough for our daily bread and we would have enough clothing. Oh, how naive we were. We did not know that we would work so much and so hard for so many years and would earn nothing, and that bread, not to speak of anything better, would be only a dream. We awakened early. The clouds had parted, and it was no longer raining. The commandant of the collective farm, Shabalin, arrived, accompanied by the chairman of the collective farm, Rusakov, and the brigadier Zhukov, as well as a group of curious onlookers. We were lined up in the schoolyard. The superiors looked us over as if we were animals brought to the market and discussed something among themselves. Finally, we heard a command. Everyone between 17 and 45 years old stepped forward to the right, the rest to the left. We all felt very uncomfortable. My husband and I and our 17-year-old son stepped to the right. The two smaller ones remained to the left. The smallest one began to cry, and Stasukas, although he was himself frightened, tried to calm him. Other cries were heard, especially among the very small children, since the young mothers went to the right and they had separated from the fathers at Naujoje Vilnia. The superiors started to look us over sharply, and pointing to one or another, continuously discussed something. I remembered Harriet Beecher Stowe's book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, which I had read at one time, and the slave market. I did not control myself and murmured, I wonder if they're going to look at our teeth. Apparently, the superiors were not very pleased. There were very few strong men, 4 Jews, 7 Lithuanians. Older men, children, and women formed a motley group, and even these, the Komarovka collective farm had to share with 2 other farms. Our inspection was over. A few flat carts arrived. They started calling us out by our last names and ordered us to load our things onto the carts. We were all assigned to live with local inhabitants. The farm was very poor. The small huts they inhabited were tiny, made of rough-hewn beams with small windows and covered with birch bark. Only the school had large windows and was covered with boards. Also, the more respectable houses where the commandant's abode and the collective farm office. The yards were enclosed by poles. The collective farm people had no other buildings besides the chatas, the aforementioned shacks. Cattle walked around freely, as did the chickens. No one kept pigs here because they had nothing with which to feed them. The road was slushy from the rain. Under the wheels, the liquefied mud made gurgling noises while we trudged along in a group behind the carts. Our carts finally turned into one of those pole enclosures. The yard was covered with uncut grass and weeds. The small house hardly resembled anything livable, since from the backyard no windows or doors were to be seen. Only in one wall, which measured about 1.5 meters, was a gaping hole. A piece cut out of one beam served as a window. The little hut resembled a poor stall. Is it possible that we will have to live here? I fearfully asked the collective farm worker who had driven us here. Yes, the commandant told me to bring you here. Hey, landlady, come and take in your cottagers, shouted the worker loudly. A middle-aged lady came out of the side door. Hello, landlady, we greeted her. The woman bowed low and answered in a pleasant voice, Hello, welcome, welcome, newcomers. We took up our bundles and followed after the woman. The door of the hut was very low, and we had to bend down quite a bit, although none of us was very tall. The Siberian inhabitants here made the doors low so that the heat would not escape, and so that they would need less refined building material. Our hosts were not old inhabitants either, but had been brought here by force 10 years ago from the Altai territory. In 1931, when collectivization began as kulaki, they had been deprived of their properties and been forcibly driven here into an uninhabitable taiga. Later, we learned much from them about their terrible experiences and hardships. The blind wall we had seen from the yard was only an addition to the dwelling hut. At one end of the hut was a small anteroom, and at the other, a cow stall. As we stepped into the living space of the hata, we were very surprised. The walls were immaculately whitewashed. The floors were of cedar boards, the color of light wax and polished to a bright shine. There were 2 windows facing south and 1 west. There were benches of the same type of boards and also polished to the same brilliance, and the table was covered with a clean tablecloth. In the corner hung an icon. The left corner was taken up by a huge bread-baking stove made of well-beaten clay, and the right corner by a bed as high as a man's chest and covered with a patchwork bedspread made of bits and pieces of rags. In front of the opening of the stove, small shelves were fastened to the wall for dishes. They were also covered by a makeshift curtain of small bits of rags. This was their entire wealth. We put our bundles into the addition to the main building. If you have anything of value, bring it into the main chata and put it under the bed. Otherwise, when we go off to work, someone might steal it, our landlady suggested. Maybe you would like to cook something. There's a fireplace in the yard. It didn't rain today, so we fired the stove early because we have to go to work. But we were allowed to stay home today because you arrived. The commandant ordered the sauna to be heated. You will flog yourself with leafy branches after your journey. All of your bones will relax, explained our landlady pleasantly. We were hungry, but food was the biggest problem. We tried to get some potatoes. Oh, dearies, we don't have any for ourselves. This spring there was a huge flood. At the end of June, everything was flooded. All the potatoes that had been planted were destroyed. Whoever had any left, the collective farm took all of them away. That's the plan. We have to replant everything all over again instead of those soggy ones. They told us that in the fall, after we harvest them, we'll get some for our work days. In our gardens, as you see, we have 3 R's and a family of 5. Bread is only a memory. We only feed ourselves with potatoes and skimmed milk. Why only skimmed? You have a cow, you can make cottage cheese, butter. Oh, dearies, you will live and you will learn. In the spring, the cows can hardly drag their feet along, and once they go out onto the grass, they're eaten by mosquitoes. Once those disappear, they're beset by other pests, horseflies, gadflies. The cattle knock themselves out trying to fend them off. We get about 5 to 6 liters of milk a day. The government requires that we supply 300 liters, and they demand 4% fat. But what do we know about what percent fat it is? So we pour out 400 liters and more to make up for the fat. As for the cow, we have to give the government 48 kilos of meat and the hide of the animal. What do you mean? You have 1 cow, and from that cow you have to give up milk and meat and the hide? So what do you do the following year? We are amazed, disbelieving, but our landlady left. Well, you have to be very clever how you go about giving the meat from a live cow, its hide, and also keep on milking it, so that both you and the government would have milk. And now you also want some milk. Yes, we became convinced of that later, that it was as he said, only we were not able to be so clever and pay our account to the government, and for that we paid dearly, but about that later. The Brigadier Sidor Zhukov came by and announced that we did not have to go to work today, and that he could heat the banya and wash ourselves and do our laundry. We were also allowed to go to the store and buy necessary items. How to heat the banya, I did not know, nor where to get wood, nor where to get a basin to heat the water for washing. Our landlady led me to the shore of the river, to a Lilliputian 3-by-3-meter hut containing no window except for a hole cut in the beam about 30 centimeters long and the width of the beam. It was stopped up by a clump of grass. In the corner stood a small, beaten clay stove with a large opening. The floor was covered with thin, split rails, and the door was so low that even if you crouched down very low, you had to be careful not to scrape your back. The ceiling and the walls were all encrusted with soot, and even if you brushed against it lightly, you soiled yourself with a black, sticky mass. Our landlady brought a cast iron pot about the size of a pail, with a pointy bottom, a wide top, and round pot belly in the middle. She was a very pleasant little woman and asked how she should address me, that is, what my name and my father's name was. Since here everyone called each other only by their first name, but if they wished to show respect to someone, they also used the patronymic. Therefore, Velichayut meant to show respect. I told her I was Josefa Stanislavovna. Oh, that's so hard to pronounce. Perhaps I won't remember it. I will only call you by the patronymic, said Our Lady. But even Stanislavovna was too difficult to remember. And she called me by a Russian name she had heard, which was easier to pronounce, Yaroslavna. I never corrected her. Let her call me by whatever name was easier for her. Just watch, Yaroslavna. When you are heating the water, make sure the pot is full. Otherwise, the edges will chip, and it can even crack completely, and that will be it. We'll have no more banya. We won't be able to buy another one anywhere. I filled up the pot to the brim with water, and the landlady herself lit the stove. Thick black clouds poured out in billows through the door and the hole in the wall. I couldn't go inside. I was suffocating, and I had no idea how to place a pot without a handle into the stove. I could not comprehend how one would be able to heat enough water in that one pot so that a family of 5 could wash itself. As soon as our landlady left, I built a small bonfire on the shore by the river. My husband and children came to help. Having looked at the miracles in the banya, they all washed themselves in the river, and I, having heated some water on the little bonfire, began to wash clothes, which had become soiled and dirty during 6 weeks of inhuman traveling conditions. And so began the first day of our new life.